Donald Trump's criminal trial will resume tomorrow following a day of pivotal rulings and testimony from multiple witnesses. Yesterday began with Judge Juan Merchan ruling Trump had violated his gag order on 9 separate occasions, fining him a total of $9,000 and warning the former president that future violations could land him in jail. I think that might have been the lead coming out of that. The judge also granted Trump's request to attend his son Barron's high school graduation on May 17th. Testimony then resumed with a total of 4 witnesses taking the stand for prosecution during the day. First up was more from Gary Farrow, the former banker for Michael Cohen. Farrow testified about the creation of a shell company that prosecutors say was used to pay adult film actress Stormy Daniels the $130,000 hush money payment to keep her quiet about an alleged affair with Trump.
But the day's most significant witness was Keith Davidson, who said he was subpoenaed to testify in the case and got himself immunity. Davidson is the former attorney for both Stormy Daniels and former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who also alleges an affair with Trump. Trump has denied any sexual encounters with either of the women. Davidson represented both Daniels and McDougal as they brokered hush money agreements. He testified that he believed the money being given to his clients ultimately was coming from Trump, but he could not recall Cohen specifically saying he was negotiating on Trump's behalf. Prosecutors will continue to question Davidson tomorrow with court in recess today. Let's bring in former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. So, Lisa, Keith Davidson didn't establish that direct line or that intent, not his job to establish intent, but didn't say he remembered Cohen saying this is for Donald Trump. What is the impact of that?
You know, he said that he understood ultimately that the money was going to come from Donald Trump, and that was a very hard-fought admission. Joshua Steinglass, who is the assistant DA leading the questioning, totally skilled trial practitioner, ran into his first really big roadblocks yesterday and trying to get that cleanly from Keith Davidson and trying to establish it was his understanding, not just his assumption. Ultimately, he got that, even after Cohen got frustrated and said, God blanket, I'll just pay it myself. He got Davidson to say, but I understood at the end of the day that money was going to come from Donald Trump. And one of the ways that he understood that was he said, Cohen, part of his identity was that he worked for Donald Trump. He never let you forget it. It was always clear that whatever Cohen was doing, he was doing for Trump at Trump's behest. He could not make the payment without Trump's knowledge and permission, is the impression that Davidson left us with.
Lisa, they're really making a point to go step by step, witness by witness of every part of this transaction. Is anything at this point surprising you in terms of the detail here and how much they're pinning down exactly how this money ultimately got back to Michael Cohen through Trump?
I think what's surprising me is how painstaking it is, and how much scaffolding they're building around the narrative that we generally understand from Michael Cohen's sort of permeation of our culture, right? Michael Cohen's narrative is one that we're all at this table and many of our viewers are very familiar with. What we didn't know is how many other people touched this transaction, were a part of the conversations around it. For example, the text yesterday between Keith Davidson and Dylan Howard of American Media were incredibly revelatory about how much back and forth went into arranging both of these deals.
Yeah, and Katty, you know, just in our coverage of Trump over the years, Lemire, definitely you would see this. He doesn't email. He covers his tracks. There's no kind of nothing touches him. Although this felt a little different because there were a lot of texts and emails around him. And there were more people involved than I expected. I thought it was more going to be just Michael Cohen and then ultimately the people who received the money. But no, this is a scheme with multiple participants.
Yeah, no, I was also interested in yesterday in how Davidson said that after the Access Hollywood tape came out, how things suddenly accelerated and changed then. Describe a little bit why that is important for the prosecution.
Well, I mean, it's huge, right? Because after the Access Hollywood tape comes out, there's an understanding that even though the Stormy Daniels story has been in circulation dating back to 2011, and Keith Davidson described how his first interaction with Michael Cohen actually goes back to that story published in 2011 because Cohen was furious it had gotten into the public domain. But, you know, the way in which, Katy, those two people interacted, I thought was fascinating. Davidson did not want to be a part of this. And he sort of tried to extricate himself from this. But because of the urgency and the exigency felt by Michael Cohen and the National Enquirer, Keith Davidson gave an aura of just when I thought they were out, they pulled me back in.
So they played the tape yesterday, right? The Access.
No, they did not play the Access.
They read it. They read the transcript, or how does it?
They read portions of a transcript from Donald Trump's deposition in the E. Jean Carroll case. You might think,
even worse. Okay.
Well, why is that relevant? It's because it contains really foundational admissions like, this is my ex handle.
Right.
I was married to Melania during this period of time. Even getting those really basic admissions from the horse's mouth, so to speak, has been fundamental for prosecutors.
But I guess my point, Jonathan Lemire, is hearing these things read out loud somehow is worse than sometimes seeing them, on tape.
Yeah, extraordinarily cringeworthy, but also potentially impactful, and as Lisa said, laying out an important foundation. Speaking of foundations, let's talk about the gag order and the judge holding Trump in contempt. Now, it's only $9,000. That's
right.
For Donald Trump, not a lot of money. For other people, of course, it would be. But tell us why it's important that the judge did this, right? Is he sending a signal like, look, I'm going to treat you like any other defendant. You violated it. Here, we're going to do this. And forecast for us what that could mean going forward. He's got another hearing tomorrow on this very same issue, more potential violations. Could it really mean ending up with Trump in jail?
I think it could, John, but a lot of things have to go that way. First of all, tomorrow's hearing isn't one predicated on that notice. In other words, the things that we're going to talk about tomorrow are things Trump has already done. They predate this decision. And so you can't say that Trump had fair warning when he said those things, that Merchan was willing to impose an incarceratory penalty. On the other hand, there are a couple things from the order that I think are really important. Merchan is essentially saying to the public and to everybody else, including the New York State legislature, it's not enough that the statute only permits me to fine this guy $1,000 per. It should be a penalty that's meaningful to the person that I'm awarding it against. And in this situation, it doesn't hurt this guy, and yet my hands are tied, right? My two options are jail or $1,000 per violation. But the other thing on which I think the incarceratory penalty hinges has nothing to do with Donald Trump at all. There's a paragraph that I think folks are overlooking where Merchan says, it's not lost on me that the guy is the GOP presumptive nominee, and witnesses in this case cannot use the gag order as a sword and a shield. And so my understanding of what counts as a violation in the future will also be contingent on how other people relevant to this matter behave. In other words, Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, if you continue to use the gag order as protection for your own self while taking swipes at him that he can't take at you, that will influence what I understand to be a violation. I'm sensitive to this defense that Todd Blanche has raised, that he is entitled to defend himself in the political domain, and I'm going to take that into consideration.
He wants decorum. He wants people to behave themselves and not mouth off.
Just like anybody else, any other defendant. So, Lisa, you were at the courthouse. Were you in the courtroom, or you were at the...
I was.
You were in the
for part of the day yesterday.
So, in the courtroom. So, you've expertly given us the substance. Let's talk atmospherics.
Yes.
Donald Trump alleged to have dozed off again a couple of times. Maybe his lids got heavy. I don't know. I can't judge if he was sleeping or not. He certainly was snapping too a couple of times. It's cold in there. He's complained about that a lot, which theoretically keeps you awake. But anyway, tell us about Donald Trump sitting at the table yesterday.
Donald Trump's demeanor changes based on what's going on in the courtroom. I will tell you from where I sat in the overflow room yesterday in the first row, having a big view of a huge screen.
Wow.
Donald Trump appeared to be asleep or resting more often than not, particularly during the first part of the day, where we heard from witnesses who were there as mostly records custodians. On the other hand, where the subject matter is very clearly Donald Trump and what Donald Trump might have been thinking, like we've seen, for example, with Keith Davidson's testimony or the more explosive moments of David Pecker, Donald Trump is sitting there and appraising and watching.
Well, of course, he's
interested. So, I would say he is selectively choosing when to engage, but during the morning in particular, this was not a person who was very interested or maybe enraptured by what was going on.
Did having Eric there make a difference? difference for him, do you think?
No, and I think having Eric there actually was very sad to watch, because this might have been some of the first times that Eric has seen some of these documents, and I and other reporters in the courtroom noticed at times there are monitors that show the documents. Eric Trump was looking up at the documentation through which this deal was done, including emails between Cohen and Davidson, and sort of looking at them interestedly, in particular the contract between Peggy Peterson and David Dennison, who you know are the pseudonyms for Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels. Watching Eric Trump watch those documents as just a human being, that struck me.
That's hard.
It was.
All right.
You know, these people are people too.
Yeah, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, thank you so much for your ongoing coverage. It's
Thanks,
been
Lisa.
amazing.
Thank you, guys.